A liberal is supposed to be somebody who's anti-authoritarian. A liberal is supposed to be somebody who's for the people, is for freedom of speech. Neoliberals are the exact opposite. They're for censorship. They're against workers. They're against unions. They're for the corporations. I mean, to me, that's what I think of. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I'm not an academic, that's for sure. I'm also a comedian, a nightclub comedian, entertaining drunks my whole career. And then turns out the news is so shitty. It's so corrupted in the United States that I can do a way better job than people who get millions and millions of dollars to do the news. The news is just propaganda in the United States, 100%.
And and at the moment, Joe Rogan seems to be fighting his own personal battle against them by platforming all the people, you know, who have their accounts taken down, etc., etc. How long can this go on for, Jimmy? Because a populace and its citizens that no longer have faith in the media shows that society is broken as far as I'm concerned.
That's right. And that's why Joe Rogan gets 11 million downloads per podcast, and CNN gets less than 1 million people watching theirs. So, I mean, he's just destroying them. And why? Because he's not propaganda. Joe Rogan is an honest actor, and people sense it. And he reaches across the aisle. He endorsed Bernie Sanders, but they want to make him seem like he's a crazy right winger because that's what a cult does. And the Democratic Party is a cult. And look what happened to Sarah Silverman. Look what happened to Patton Oswalt. Sarah Silverman criticized an MSNBC newsreader for lying, and she did lie. And she was and the newsreader was African American. She was immediately pilloried as a racist, as a person. You would never say that to a white woman. And she had to apologize. She had to apologize for criticizing a news person for lying. She goes, "I'm sorry, oi." She goes, "Oi, I don't want any trouble." And they did the same thing for me. And I said, guess what? I'm going to take some fucking trouble. I'm not going to knuckle under to the establishment. I'll take the trouble. I'm going to tell the truth. And when a news person's lying, I'm not going to go along with the fucking lie. And I'm not going to go along with the smear after I call out their lie. And that's what they did. Look what Patton Oswalt did. Patton Oswalt took a picture with Dave Chappelle. He had to fucking have him do a mea culpa because he took a picture with somebody. Or he's out of the cult. That's it. Sarah Silverman, you're out of the cult. Patton Oswalt, you're out of the cult, and they will do anything to stay in the cult.
Isn't that the problem, Jimmy? They do anything to stay in the cult.
Yes.
When actually, people like us, people like you, people like Joe Rogan will say, no, fuck you. And that means that we stand up and they become less powerful. But the people who capitulate just make them more powerful.
Yes, and that's sad. And I sympathize with them. What are they supposed to do? Not work in show business anymore? They're in a tough spot. I blame the culture. I don't blame them. But Joe Rogan's kicking everyone's ass, and he's not going to stop. And people aren't going to stop. I just saw it. So they had these fake doctors, 250 doctors signed a letter to Spotify saying you should have someone on to counter Joe Rogan's misinformation. Meanwhile, mainstream news has been lying about COVID at the top of their lungs for fucking 2 straight years. And they lie about everything. But but on Joe Rogan, it's dangerous because he has a counter narrative to their bullshit. They want him to bring out hey, why don't you make MSNBC and CNN bring on Dr. Robert Malone? Why don't you ever fucking make that? Why don't you ever make that demand that NBC and CBS, they have to have balance. No one ever, they never brought on anybody to debunk Russiagate. They never brought on anybody to have a counter narrative to COVID, mandates, vaccines, none of it. They have to go on Joe Rogan's show. And by the way, Joe Rogan, I heard, I don't know how accurate this is, but I heard that his interview with Dr. Robert Malone got 40 million downloads. So by trying to censor him, it had what they call the Streisand effect, which is when you try to hide something and censor it and silence it, you just get more attention to it, and more people see it. And that's exactly what happened with Dr. Robert Malone on Joe Rogan's show. And now they want Joe Rogan and Spotify to have balance. Nobody else has fucking balance in the news media. And the biggest purveyor of misinformation is first is the government. And then the second one is the establishment news media. Joe Rogan's not the problem. Joe Rogan is the antidote to the problem.
Well, this is why I said recently, even though I do think both Peter McCullough and Malone probably are wrong on a lot of things, in my opinion. Now, I'm not a medic, but I do think that. I still respect Joe for having them on. And the reason I say that is, to me, the effects of this sort of censorship, where essentially the big tech companies now decide what the truth is far worse than someone going on a podcast and saying some things that may later turn out to be medical misinformation. That's how I feel. And the reason I say this is, I remember the day I woke up and I saw the New York Post had posted an article about Hunter Biden. And then I saw that every single big tech company, this is on the eve of a pivotal election in your country, Jimmy, and every big tech company just went, no, you're not sharing this story. It's Russian disinformation. And let's call it what it is. You know, people can talk about election interference, and I'm sure it happens both ways, but that was blatant election interference. And these people are now claiming that they know what the truth is.
That's
Fuck
right.
you. Fuck you. And that's why I love what Joe is doing, even though I think some of the things that these guests are saying are wrong, because someone needs to push back against this shit.
The government is always lying. The CDC and the FDA the FDA gets 70% of its budget from big pharma when they have to approve a drug or a vaccine. They're not an independent organization. And when Donald Trump was president, guess what? Every Democrat was saying the same thing, that I don't trust Governor Cuomo in New York said, I don't trust the process and I don't trust the FDA.
I do want to ask you about that, especially as it pertains to the vaccine. We saw Dr. Fauci last night say that he trusts the experts at the FDA. How confident are you in the approval process of the FDA right now?
Well, first, how confident am I? I'm not that confident, but my opinion doesn't matter. I don't believe the American people are that confident. You're going to say to the American people now, here's a vaccine, it was new, it was done quickly, but trust this federal administration and their health administration that it's safe. And we're not 100% sure of the consequences. I think it's going to be a very skeptical American public about taking the vaccine, and they should be.
Then they wanted him to be the next Democratic president before he got kicked out of office for killing all those old people and sexually harassing everyone. And Joe Biden said he was vaccine hesitant. Kamala Harris said she wouldn't take the vaccine. They all said a version of this. And then all of a sudden, Joe Biden becomes president. Now they completely flip their tune, and I'm supposed to believe them? Joe Biden's a fucking pathological liar. He's a bigger liar. He's just as big a liar as Trump. And I've got the receipts to prove it. The guy's and he's demented. And they're lying to us that this guy isn't demented. And I'm supposed to believe them? Fuck you. Fauci's a criminal. He should be in jail. There's a movie called The Dallas Buyers Club, which stars Matthew McConaughey. And it's all about how the government, Fauci, fucked over AIDS patients by keeping drugs that could help them away, just like they did with COVID.